Okay. And so we're going to use kind of the same technique. And honestly, this kind of calculator kind of works like an extremely cheap graphing calculator to a certain degree. It is way cheaper. That's why this was on your supply list. It is very, very useful for all your math classes. So not all calculators have this, but this one does. And so here's we're going. All right. So we hit, does anybody remember which button to hit to graph something without having to do all the work? It's the table button, right? And so what I need to do, and I'm looking at number 1 on your worksheet here, I just need to type that in so we can look at this and see what's going on with it. And so how do I do square root? I do second, this button, and then I just put an X. You can do this manually. It just takes a little bit longer. I'll show you that too. All right. So y equals this. Okay, I'll make sure that's right, and I'm going to hit enter. And honestly, this is all fine. Until you know what you're fully doing, you wouldn't know what to switch anyway. So just start on 0. Step 1 is great. Okay, and I want you to look at numbers here once you get this done. And I'm going to see stuff like this. Does everybody see the errors? See errors on yours? Why do we think it says error? It can't be done, right? If it doesn't, you put something in wrong. For the negatives, it does. Okay. But then I got numbers here, and it's going to have decimals. And do I need to write the whole thing when I do a t-table? Probably not. I probably can round a little bit, because like when you're graphing, are you going to be your graph so accurate that you got like 2.236047? I can get out like a little micrometer or some kind of ruler to measure that. No, so let's just go ahead and do this. So what I'm going to do is I don't really want to write down the errors on this because I can't graph those points anyways. So what I want to do is I want to start with the first one that I can actually write down. Looks like 0 I can write down, doesn't it? So on your little sheet here, do your t-table. And if you don't have a t-table, I'm just assuming you didn't do it, and so I just don't give you credit. So does the calculator potentially do the t-table? Yeah. Yes, but what are you showing me? You're showing me your work. What's your work? You put stuff in the calculator. So the calculator gives you the information you need to do the rest of your work. So just write this down, 0, 0. I like using the calculator for this because it makes less work, right? Do we think this is going to be a straight line? Okay, because we're still working on nonlinear graphs, nonlinear functions. I'm just going to round to 1 decimal place. That's fine. You can do 2 decimal places if you want to. And I'm just going to do a few. And really what I want to do is I want to do enough till I get to this looks good. All right. I'm going to get enough to get the shape. So about 5 will get me the shape probably on this one. Okay, now I'm going to graph it. Okay, 0, 0. That's easy. Let's see if this shows up good. I like using red to graph. 1, 1. And I'll punch in a little bit on this so we can see it. Two, 1.4. Well, I guess 1.4 is in between 1 and 2, right? Maybe here? 1.7. Well, I guess that would be a little above 1.4, right? And 4, 2. Okay, so this is how this is going to work. Okay, it kind of looks straight the way I drew it, but really it's a curve. It's just not much of a curve. Okay, so that's how our graph is going to look. Okay, and just looking at the calculator, the nice thing about the calculator is you can see where it's going. Okay, I'm going to keep going. At 9, it's 3. At 16, it's 4. It looks like it's still going up, doesn't it? It's not going up very fast, is it? So, do I think it's going to go up forever? Slowly? Looks like it. I don't see it stopping anywhere, do you? Okay, so now I'm going to go back to these errors. Maybe. Calculator didn't like what I did to it. He's like, why did you make me go all the way up to like 72 and want to go back down to 0? That's not nice. All right. So let's look at these errors. Since we can't graph them, do they exist? Can we use negative numbers to do a square root? Let's see. Do this for me real quick. Square root of negative 16. What's the square root of 16? 4, right? What do we think the square root of negative 16 is going to be? Domain error. What does domain mean? Domain's all your x's, right? So when we do the domain and range, and again, the purpose of doing graphs like this is to help us understand domain and range. That's what we are supposed to do. You're going to do so much more with these graphs in Algebra 2, but we're going to understand domain and range. If we have a domain error, that means we can't use it. So in this particular problem, when we do domain, I'm going to pull out a little bit. And I did notice that on the last test we did, a lot of people did not fill out domain. It's kind of the whole purpose of graphing at this point. One purpose is to know that this is not linear. The next reason to know is domain. So my domain, well, it looks like I can use all of the x's above okay. Can I use any x's below 0? How about the range? What do we think the range is? Well, but what about down here? Do we have any numbers that go down here? We start here and we go up and up and up and up, right? So in this case, range is also y is greater than or equal to 0. Basically, this is a starting point, and then we go to the right forever, and we go up forever, but we go slowly up. What this is an example of in real life is this is how a car accelerates. When you slam on the gas pedal, you accelerate pretty quickly, and then it slows up, right? Of course, a car eventually gets to where it can't go faster anymore. And some cars start to rattle and lose control and crash, so you probably don't want to push them. All right, let's see what's going to be different about this one right here. So I want you to do this one. I'm going to show you how to do it. If you don't have a calculator, I'll show you how to do it. And after we do this one, I'll show you where to find the starting point. Because probably if we have a starting point, that's the most important point, right? So try to put this in the calculator, and I'll show you how to do it if you don't have this right kind of calculator. Okay. To do it manually, for now, I'll just tell you what numbers to put in, and then I'm going to help you figure out what numbers to put in. So I'm going to do the same ones. Sure, why not? So to do it manually, all you have to do is this, because any calculator can do this part. because we're getting decimal answers, right? So any calculator can do decimals. I'm just going to type in 0 minus 3. Make sure that that's not under the square root symbol. That's going to equal negative 3. Okay, still calculator. I'm going to type in 1 minus 3. Everybody see what I'm doing to do it manually? I get a negative 2. Great. Okay, you can keep going on that. And let's see if you can get this done and graph it. If you use the table, I see I have errors again on my negative numbers. Because you can't take a square root of a negative number. In Algebra 2, you will learn what to do with square roots of negative numbers, but in Algebra 1, we just don't do it. We've got to save something for Algebra 2. Plus, this is where we're at. Okay, go and fill in a few more of these and see if it makes any sense. This is going to be negative 1.58. So 1.59 is what it rounded to. This one would be negative 1.27 rounded. This would be negative 1. Okay, try to graph that on your graph. And then we'll look at the difference between the two things. Let's see here. 0, negative 3. 1, negative 2. Negative 1.59 on 2. So negative 1.59 maybe like here. Negative 1.27 maybe here. And 4 is negative 1. So basically I'm going to make a better curve this time. Kind of like that, yeah? Okay, looking at my two graphs, are they basically the same graph? Yeah. What's the difference? One's negative, one's positive. Okay, good. So yeah, these numbers are negative and these numbers are positive. Although I will tell you, eventually these numbers get positive, yeah? Because it keeps going up. So really the difference... Does anybody else have an idea what the difference is? Is the difference where they start? This one started on 0, 0. This one started on 0, what? Okay, so they're starting places. Where do we think we got negative 3 from for our starting place? Does anybody see a clue where we could start a negative 3? This guy right here? Okay, that might be important. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip. And this is the last one I'm going to do before giving you a formula. Let's go ahead and do number 4. And so it's going to kind of show us the same thing. And again, we're not going to make these super complicated. Oh, we forgot domain and range, right? Let's look at domain and range. Domain. What x's are we allowed to use? What's the smallest x before we hit errors? 0. So we start on 0, right? Okay, range. Where do we start on range? What number is that? Okay. So don't make domain and range hard. There's a starting place, and that's how this domain and range works. We have a starting place, and then we go up from there. And on today, we're always going to go up. We're not going to make these more complicated. We want to make them just kind of basic so we can read domain and range. We're trying to make them where it's easier to get the concept. All right, let's look at 4. Of course, we need the t-table. That's how we show our work here. And that's the points we're plotting. And I will show you, because I'm not going to do this one. I'll show you what some people start doing. I'll just go like this. How do you think I grade that when I look at it? I mean, it's curved, so that means it's right? I mean, I can't see points. It's starting in the wrong place. It looks like someone just scribbled on my paper. So make sure that you have evidence and proof that you did the right thing. Okay? So let's get this t-table done. This is going to be a little different because this 3 is inside the square root, right? So make sure when you do this, you leave it inside the square root. So x plus 3. All right, that should look right. Inside the square root. It's going to give me some numbers. All right. Well, it looks like this one, it works. It works in negative numbers. Oh, well, now it stops working. Doesn't it? But it worked here. It worked on a negative 3. So probably when I write my t-table, I'm going to want to start here. And after we do this one, I'm going to show you how you know where to start. So negative 3, 0. Okay, negative 3, 0. Negative 2, 1. Negative 1, 1.4, 1. 0, 1.73, and 1 is 2. That's probably enough to get the general idea of what we're doing. You could keep going. A lot of times, once people know what they're doing, instead of doing all these decimal garbage, they skip. And I'll probably show you that tomorrow. So like some people don't hate these decimals, so they do 1, 2, and they'll skip. I don't want to graph any of these. I'll graph 6, because 6 is easy to graph, right? Some people do that. So I could put that there too if I want to. All right, let's graph this and see what it looks like. See if it looks different. Negative 3, 0. Negative 2, 1. Okay, my arrow doesn't look so good, but do you see how we have a subtle curve? So just make sure you do that curve as best you can. Let's look at domain and range. Let's see if we can get it. Here's my starting point. So my x is going to have to be greater than some number, and my y is going to be greater than or equal to some number. What do we think my x is greater than? What do we think my y is greater than? Pretty much it's my starting point, isn't it? Because basically this is where I start, and then I go up and right from here. All right, I'm going to show you a formula here. And this is going to be kind of your information that's going to help you find your starting point. And I'm not going to get technical with it right now. Probably tomorrow I will, a little bit more, but starting point. So this is going to be the formula. Y equals A x minus h plus k. And that's my K. Your starting point is going to be H, K. Okay. And I'm going to do one more for you just to kind of show you that. This is also going to really affect my my domain and range right here. So this is kind of like slope. This is going to affect it, but what we are going to have this be in Algebra 1, this is always going to be 1, so it's not even going to show up. Okay? If I were to I'm not going to go there. It's going to be 1 for our purposes. All right? H, notice it's minus H. Basically, this is kind of opposite of what you would think. If you have a positive number, you would think to go right, but technically you're going left with the starting point. If you have a negative number, you're going to go right. It's opposite. This one's confusing because it's opposite of what you normally would think. This one's not confusing. Positive is up, negative is down. Okay? And that's really all you need in your notes. This is kind of our starting point. So we're going to look at 6, and we're going to identify our starting point. Okay, use your notes to figure out your starting point. I do have the H and the K. So write down your starting point. What do we think it is? I said this is opposite, so what number should it be? I said this number is just the same. What number should it be? Is that my starting point? Okay, so even without knowing how to graph this, I know that my starting point is going to be 4, 1. It's going to start right here. Okay, and I know the shape has always been the same. What's going to change the shape is that A that I talked about that we don't have. That A can change the shape to make it more curvy, less curvy. It can flip it upside down. It can do all kinds of stuff. But for our purposes, we're just dealing this basic stuff. Okay, so there's my starting point. So when I do my t-table, I bet you that my first x that I'm going to deal with is what? 4. And what's my first y going to be? Okay, put in the calculator and see if we can get a few more points to graph on here. And let's see if, if I put this in here right, it should work, right? Theory? Okay. So I put this in here right. And it looks to me like, yes, I'm getting errors on everything before 4. That's good. Because we said 4, 1 is our first point. What's our next point? 5, 2. It's going to be 8, 3. Okay. And honestly, if you do this stuff and you remember it's a curve, you'll be fine. Using just basic points like this. So I'm gonna mark that down. 5, 2, 8, 3. So I'm gonna curve from here to here. Domain and range. Domain and range should be really, really, really easy if you just pay attention. And that's why I picked this to help us deal with domain and range. Okay, you can look at the graph. Okay, I did a bad thing here. I'm fixing it. That's supposed to be y. It's supposed to be y. I wrote an x for some reason. What's x going to be greater than or equal to? the beginning point, right? What's y going to be greater than or equal to? Beginning point. Because x starts right here, its error's all the way down here, starts right here and goes right. Y starts right here and goes up forever, but slowly. Okay, we got tons and tons of time, so we're going to work on this as much as we can, and as long as we're working, we'll see if we have to take it home.